My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn, and also with me is Tanya Finchum with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at the OSU Library. Today is Thursday, June 30th, 2011, and we're in Hugo, Oklahoma, interviewing Dudley Hamilton. Dudley, thank you for joining us today.
Quite well.
Well, we'd like to begin by learning a little bit more about you. Could you tell us uh, what year you were born and where, and a little bit about your early life?
All right. I'm old. I was born in 1929, the same year the Great Depression hit. So we both hit Earth about the same time. And my parents were farmers in northwest Texas. And my daddy was killed about 2 months before I was born. So I never saw my daddy. But had a good upbringing. Our mother had, I guess, 5 children, and I was the baby, of course, since Papa got killed. And there's my wife, my constant companion. Went to high school, never did go to college. Family didn't have it. Back in those days, if you went to college, you laid down cash money. There weren't all the student loans and opportunities like there is now. Never really wanted to. I never did like school. I have done an assortment of different kinds of work. I never have been interested. And I'm a hard worker, love to work hard, diligently. A good employee always. I brag on myself. But never have been interested in making a lot of money. I just always wanted to do what excited me. And I'll tell you 2 or 3 things that did excite me, and I did all of them. Never have gotten through all the way through the list yet, but I'm too old now. When I was in high school, I fell in love with collie dogs. And that was about the time the Lassie book come out. And they made a movie, and I just went nuts over that. There was another man who had 3 or 4 of his books down there. Wrote books. He was a college reader. He lived up in New Jersey, Albert Payson Turkey. Kind of a gentleman, a New Englander. And over a period of time, I read all those books, and he was such a booster for the college breed of dogs. And I'm not talking about border collies. I like those Lassie type. Look right, get that picture of that dog right there. That's one of my dogs. No, on the bookcase there. It's just a snapshot. Yeah. Yeah. I was married, and I decided when I was a kid I was going to raise college and good ones. I wanted really good ones. And you can tell there. I had them. That was one of my first. But my wife and I showed our college dogs. We put championships on several dogs. And I studied from the time I get home from work until we'd go to bed at night. I was reading about dogs and how to take care of them and how to groom them. We worked hard at it, and we were very successful. We finished championships on several dogs. We used to show dogs from New Mexico plumb to the East Coast. We were very successful. So that satisfied that wish. When I was young, we lived in Texas. I'm a native born Texan. I always admired the highway program down there. I always wanted to do that. so sharp, clean and neat, and had those pretty uniforms on, and everybody was respectful for them. And I thought, I want to do that. Well, I saw a little article in the Abilene Reporter newspaper. They're going to get examinations for power control. Well, I went down and took that examination, and they tested something over 800 men. That was before women were accepted. They tested over 800 men and chose 50 out of that 800 or something to go to the academy. Unfortunately, I was one of the 50. And that is, I don't know if you know anything about that kind of work or not, but it's boot camp in the military is a breeze up to going to the Highway Patrol Academy in any state, particularly Texas. It's hard. It is really hard. And unless you want to do that so very badly, you can go home anytime you want to. I give up. This is it. And we'd wake up every morning and slept in a big old open bay farm tour. Every morning it'd be another empty bed. And we ended up, they have to take an examination every Saturday on what you studied all that week. And if you flunk that exam on Saturday morning, you're out. So it keeps you sharp. And several guys got busted out that way. Most of them just quit, just went home. We ended up out of 50 people that started the academy. We ended up graduating 24. And I was one of them. I've always told my friends, unless you absolutely wanted very badly to be a Texas Highway Patrolman, you wouldn't do it. If you ever see those guys, you can just tell yourself, there is a man that wanted that job so bad, where you go through all kinds of misery. They used to put boxing gloves on us. We'd have a physical ed class every day, hour or 2 hours. And it'd match up by weight. And I was a big old kid. I think I was 21, maybe 22 years old then. And there's a Mexican boy from El Paso, was deputy sheriff out there. He had applied and got accepted. And unfortunately, we weighed the same. And they put the boxing gloves on me and him and put us out there. And that old kid nearly beat me to death before I got out of that school. But he had been working as deputy sheriff in El Paso. He was used to fighting with drunks. Well, I'd never had a fight in my life, and he beat me unmercifully. But like a good trooper, I kept trooping anyway. Later on, I always wanted to learn to fly an airplane. So I started taking flying lessons and did that. Soloed, I've got 5 or 6, maybe 7 hours of solo time. But the guy on the airplane quit. He left the country, so that ended my air. But I got to do it, and a few other little things I wanted to do and did that aren't too important. But was always fascinated by circus, and I was 52, maybe 54 years old, working hard. I'd run a bread route down there in Texas, and that's hard work, 9-10 hours a day out in the weather, 6 days a week, and was single, living by myself, and I was divorced. The children were gone, and I decided to go down to Sarasota, Florida. That's where the Ringling brothers had their winter quarters. That is the Circus City. We call ourselves Circus City here, and we are sort of. But Sarasota, there's been countless circuses down there. So I took vacation, went down there, and that just did it. They had the Circus Hall of Fame down there, and I went through that and went through the old ring and match and all of that kind of stuff. And it wasn't long after that when that young lady come through St. Angelo, and she called me trying to get me to go to work at the circus. So I did. And best move I ever made in my life. I was working for Miss Barry's Bakery. It had been 17 years, had moved up in the company. They offer a lot of perks. Free health insurance, free vacation, free retirement plan, everything paid for. I mean, I was getting three weeks vacation every year as long as you worked. It was only about 2 years away from getting 4 weeks of vacation. And I really was sort of scared to quit that job, but I did. And I'm so proud I did. I started working for the circus, and Mr. Jackson said, I'm going to send you to California. He was in California because they were short booking agents. Am I spending too much time doing that? They were short on booking agents. It's one of the hardest jobs on the circus there is to fill, because you're always out there by yourself. You take your wife or girlfriend with you if you want to, but who wants to sit in a hotel room all day while I'm out working?
And what was the name of the circus? Your first circus?
Carson and Barnes.
Okay.
They went right up the street.
Okay.
At that time, they were the largest tent circus in the world. 5 rings, 23 elephants every day, and on and on and on. So it's a little bit frightening to know we've got about 200 people on that show, or did then, and that circus probably was, I don't know what it was valued at, probably $5 million. And we had to stay in motels looking the circus, but sometimes I lie in bed at night, get scared thinking about, there's Mr. Miller and his family's got $4 or $5 million tied up in that thing, depending on me and the other agents to put them in good spots out there. 200 people and their families depending on me for the same thing. That's a pretty big responsibility. So, and that was part of the adrenaline rush and the fright that I experienced. But I worked hard at that. When Mr. Jackson was the general agent, he's the man that I met in Little Rock. And fortunately for me, Jess liked me. He spent a lot of time working with me, and taught me a lot about the circus business. Jazz was an interesting person himself. He retired from the Marine Corps as a captain, and after he retired, he started working for the state of California in the sales tax department. He was moved way up in that job and retired from the state of California. And he and his wife had a little travel trailer. They were just knocking around the country full time. The RV people call it. And he started working for Carson and Barnes himself, and he moved straight to the top. So he was executive vice president of that company and got on to handle a lot of the circus business, but he handled a lot of Mr. Miller's private investments. But I was very fortunate. Jeff would booking agents go from town to town. they usually suggest what town they you go to, the general agent. And this works a number of different ways with different shows, but most circuses, the agent will go into a town and to explore the possibility to bring their circus there. And we always play under the auspices of some of what we call a night sport club, Lions Club, Kiwanis, Lion Hub, all of those, Optimus, and numerous others, for a share of the money. And you get on the telephone, you call them and ask if you come by this afternoon, explain to them, what we're doing, how it works. And usually you're talking to the president. I always went to the Chamber of Commerce when I first get into a town. Chambers all have a list of the clubs and organizations in the town. You guys are familiar with it, I can see. So usually those lists are a year or 2 or 3 out of date, but at least that's a starting place. And we call with people. And what I learned to do is don't tell them any more on the telephone. You have to. I want to sit down with them like we are here. And because, if you're talking to them on the telephone, you don't know how stressed out they are or how busy they are at their desk. You may not have their full attention. That's the reason I like it. So I'd ask them if I could come by in the morning and visit with you briefly about the circus, and they're always interested in their club, we'll make a little money. So I go by. What you do, what a smart agent does, is try to sell that person on the idea. They're always going to tell you, well, I can't make that decision myself. We have to get the vote from the members or the board of directors. So 2 things happen when you're a booking agent on a circus. You are always trying to rush this deal through so you can get your commission check and get on to the next town. And the prospects, are always trying to slow you up and put you off. So used to when I train new agents, I tell them it's kind of a game between you and those prospects. You're going to be trying to speed them up. They're going to be trying to slow you up. So, and that's the way it works. Mr. Jackson trained me, and I think I was the last agent that he ever trained. After he trained me, he would send all the trainees to me, and I had to do that, no extra pay, and I'd be on the road, no telling where, but he'd send it to me and would get them a hotel room. He would do classroom work during most of the day, and I would be setting appointments to go to club meetings, and when I go to the Lions Club meeting or wherever to do a presentation, I take the trainee with me, and let them sit there and see how I did it, what I told, what I didn't tell. And I had a nephew, real smart kid. We hired him. He told me one time, Uncle, when you do this job, there is a time to talk, and there's a time to shut up and listen, and he is so right. But what a good agent's got to do is recognize that time when it rolls around. Anyway, I keep those trainees about a week or 10 days. Calls yes, and I said, I believe this old boy is ready or this girl is ready. Love to train with him and make such good agents. I think one reason they do, they run a little bit scared. They know they're competing with the men out there, and they will leave no stone unturned. and it pays off. One of the best people I ever trained was a young single girl. She had a college degree. She was I don't know what they call that, but what she learned to do in college was design women's clothing. The kid was smart. She couldn't, but she worked some Western wear store for a while. He ended up booking Circus, but she was good. We were down in Louisiana, and Jess sent her to me. And we had gone through some little town, getting to our target town. And I always liked to take a little nap after lunch every day, back in those days. So we did her classroom work early. And I told her what I was trying to do, just get her out of there so I could go to sleep. I said, why don't you get in your car and go over there to that little town is 20 miles away. Drive around over there, see if you can find a vacant lot big enough to put Circus on. See how prosperous the town. But we always like to go to the school house. You learn a lot going to school sometime. Looking at, especially when parents come to pick the kids up. The little Honey Grove, tiny little town over here. I was over there one day. The parents were bringing school kids out, and I never saw as many new cars in my life as there is in that little town. That says good prosperity. So that's you learn to look for things like that. Anyway, I lost the thread of my story. What was that?
Well, you sent her down to that town?
Oh yeah, I said go over and just look around and see what you think. And it's about this time of day, and I sent that kid over there, and it started getting close to night. I started getting scared. I thought, oh my. In Louisiana, I'm kind of scared down there anyway, in some of those little towns. And it was pitch dark before that kid knocked on my door, and she come in waving a contract in her hand. I had that happen to me twice. She went over there and went in and talked to somebody and sold them the Circus to an agent. And so she just did a good job. I got another deal like that one time. We hired my nephew that I mentioned. Bruce Gasson sent him to me. No boy smarter than he could be, but he's lazy. He come in, and I was trying to make a deal with a mall to put the Circus on their parking lot. And then the guy put me off, and sort of had him on hold. Same situation. We did our classroom work in the morning. Come my nap time, and I said, Joe, why don't you? There was 2 or 3 ladies had some kind of little club. It was some little off the wall thing you never heard of before. They expressed a little bit of interest, and I said, why don't you go out there and talk to those girls? Kind of see what you think. Well, he did the same thing. While he was gone, my phone rang, and it was the mall manager. He said, I decided to go with you in that deal. So I rushed down there right quick, and he and I signed the contract. About an hour later, my nephew walked in. He waived the contract, had booked the same day in the same town, and we was in big dookie. So I called the boss and I said, Jess, you're not going to like what I'm going to tell you. And the old man blew up. He said, what in the world? And I said, well, you always told me. We used to get, I think, $390 front money when we signed the agreement with them. And Jeff always told me, he said, whoever signs that contract gives you a check for 3 names is the person that gets the circus. I don't care if it's talking to half a dozen people. And that's what I did. And I said, Jeff, you know what you always told me? He said, yeah. I said, well, that man handed me a check and signed the contract. So now we have to go back and explain to the ladies that, you know, I knew that mall, in the first place, that was our lot.
Mm-hmm.
If we put that show with those girls, we'd have to find a lot. And that show's big, it takes 7 acres to put that thing in. So that's always a problem with a big show. But anyway, but I just love circus. I've done several jobs with the circus since then. They started this little show, Kelly Miller, up the year that, I think first year I worked at Carson Orange, excuse me. And David Rawls come down here. It was a 3-way partnership, this show was. And he was the manager and made all the decisions. Mr. Jackson, the man who was my boss up there, was one of the partners in this show. And Mr. Miller, the old gentleman that owns Carson Circus. But a lot of the good people, Carson Orange, come down here. Just like David Ross, he had the concessions on that show up there. That big income. You probably making $50 or maybe close to $100,000 a year on concessions on that show. But he quit, you know. Of course, he owned part of this one. But a lot of good people come down here. One that wasn't so good, that was me. But anyway, on Circus, everybody always wants to be on the show. Now, there's a lot of jobs that you do where you're not on that show. Like this office up here, we've got probably 6 or 7, maybe 9 people working that office. And I work here. And there are all kinds of people like booking agents. They're not on that show every day. We've got press agents out there that aren't on the show. School clown is not on the show. 24-hour man's not on the show. What we call the paper hangers, people put up the posters, they're not on the show. So certainly have a lot of employees that are invisible. You never see them. But and those are the jobs that are hard to fill because everybody wants to be on the show. And those jobs that I mentioned on Circus we call front end jobs. They all are involved in marketing. And it's a lonely job. You're out there, you sell. I used to go several months at a time and never see a person that I knew, where you could sit down and just kick back and visit. So it's pretty tough. They're hard. They're always, if you're just a fair booking agent, there's always a job out there where you'd work just about any circus you want to work for. But that's the way I got into this racket, and I love it. It's different. You don't have all that corporate hooey to put up with. You don't have a whole string of superiors. If anything, if you have a problem, you go straight to the owner or the manager. If they say yes or no, that's it. It's over with. Instead of all this climb the ladder and backstabbing. So I like it. People that work for a circus are there because they love it. Circus work is not at all big pay. There are no perks, zero. No insurance. There's no vacation time. There's no sick days. There's no nothing. You just get paid every Sunday morning, and that's it. This little old job I've got here, what I do now is mow the grass, bend the trees, keep the street fixed. It's about as close to retirement on Circus as you'll ever get. Most of these old shows have some old man about like me. They always usually call him uncle. And pretty decent old guys. A lot of them are pretty crusty, stubborn, hateful old men. But I'm just let it rag. If that'll be some circus fan, they'll talk forever. It's excuse.
That's fine.
I like a girl I used to work with on Circus. She used to be our school teacher on the show. And she was good. Kids loved her. But we always have a school teacher on this show. And Carson Bart has a school teacher. She college graduate, has her teaching certificate and all of that. But she was born and raised on the circus lot. So, but the little kid, we usually have 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 8 kids. They have school in the cookhouse. The kitchen, the way our circus is, the kitchen for the cookhouse is in a semi-trailer. You have a complete kitchen in there, freezers and everything. And then they'll hang canvas up at the top of that thing, to slant it out like that. And put about 5 picnic tables in there for the circus people to sit down. They got sidewall around it, give you some privacy. And kids gather in there about 10 o'clock every morning and have school. And it's good for the kids. They work through, they've got some kind of program, Hugo school system. When the kids come, we close every year about Halloween. And the show comes in and all the kids enroll in the local school, and they are always right up even with the other kids with their work. A lot of them go on to college to do well. So it's good. One good thing about it, when we get into an interesting town, like we did this in Niagara Falls, and we used to, every year we'd play around Washington, D.C. for about 2 or 3 weeks. But we get in a spot like that, Grand Canyon or wherever, and there's something interesting. So we have a van on the show, and people load their kids in the van, take them out there to see whatever. Instead of studying about it in the book, they go look at it. They usually take them to Smithsonian every year, and other, and that's good. And those little kids come back and tell their friends about it. I have 2 grandkids. My son used to work for Circus. He was head mechanic of this show. And he had 2 little kids who went to circus school. When they moved back to our little town down home, and told the other kids that I used to go to circus school. Kid wouldn't believe it. They said, "Yeah, right, you sure did." But they did. And one of my little grandson, he was crazy about this little girl here. He'd go over her house and just hang around. So, well, now how am I doing? Am I
You're fine.
killing too much time?
No, I want to actually go back to your booking days.
Okay.
How did your season run? I mean, are you a couple weeks ahead, behind?
Oh no.
How's your time frame?
Time frame is if you're not further away more than 2 months, you're in trouble. When you start running out of time, you go into town and try to get it put together real quick, it can be done easily. If you can venture sponsors to do it. But they always want to have time and have little meetings, blah, blah. But you know, if you just jump in with all 4 feet, you can do it to 3 days' time. The clubs don't work that way. Those club members usually got some restaurant on the club meeting day. They eat, have a little program. They go back to their store or job or whatever and forget all about that circus that we're supposed to be getting ready for. But we'll run anywhere from 2 months to a full year ahead of the circus. And we have a fantastic reputation in this industry. And so do all. There are 3 circuses in Hugo. All 3 of them have excellent reputation. So once you play in a town, they'll usually want you back again. Now, Carson and Barnes would wait about 3 or 4 years, sometimes 5 years, before they'd go back into a town again. When you do that, it's just like a whole new deal, because that president that hired you had already been out 3 or 4 terms. You know, it's a whole new set of people. But this little show, about every other year, if a town is successful, we go back about every other year to play for them, and they're always glad to have us back. You know, particularly, sometimes I have seen clubs that wouldn't make any money, but they'd be so happy with the circus, you know, something. All 3 of the Hugo shows, the 2 smaller ones particularly, play in small towns. And small towns don't get any live entertainment, 0, none. And you go in some little town that hasn't been a circus, occasionally you put that thing in a town that has never had a circus. And everybody in there might not be 1,000 people in town, but all 1,000 of them pretty well show up to see the circus. And it just thrills them to death. So it's rewarding that way. What breaks your heart, our contract, I never always talk about trying to, don't call this a contract to your prospect. Call it the agreement that we signed with you. It sounds the same thing, but it sounds, you start talking contract and all that legal fluid, people get scared a lot of it. So I just always tell them, now this agreement we're going to sign with you says that you people should do blah, blah. But I've got what I'm going to tell you. Oh, what breaks your heart? We asked them to put up posters, try to get some of the street sign, you know, these signboards with the yellow background, good advertising. If you get 2 or 3 of them in small towns, that's great advertising. That does not cost you a penny. It costs the show. But some sponsors do those things, some of them do nothing. JCs, I don't know if you need your girl. I used to be a JC, and the worst sponsors out there. Those people are young, and they're making job changes, changing girlfriend, boyfriend, and you go to their meeting, and they get enthusiastic, just all fired up. Yeah, you bet. But when you leave, that's so many of them just don't do anything. Occasionally you'll get a good JC group.
Do you remember the first town you booked?
Yeah, he was in California, and I was scared to death. But just fortunately, I booked the first club that I ever went in to talk to. And I guess I worked so hard, it probably looked so pitiful. I don't remember what kind of group it was, but the best date that I ever booked was in Missouri. And it was near, I forget what's the capital city of Missouri. Anyway, it's about 30 or 40 miles from there. And we played 3 or 4 spots around the capital town, city. And there was a little TV station. We advertised that thing on TV, you know, to give the days when we were going to be at different times. And, but I went in, it was a small town. And any other time I can tell you the name of it, but anyway, there's a college there. That college, there's no building, no church building that was in London, and it was bombed during World War II. They dismantled that thing, stone by stone, every piece of wood, marked it, cataloged it, and sent it to that little town in Missouri. And rebuilt that thing on that college campus there. And when they dedicated that thing, they invited Winston Churchill to come over and speak at the dedication program. And that is the first, you girls may be too young to remember, but during the war years, we had what they call the Iron Curtain. That was the communist countries. You couldn't find out anything about what was going on behind the Iron Curtain. That's the first time that term, the Iron Curtain, was ever used. Winston Churchill made some reference to the Iron Curtain in his speech there at that dedication party. But anyway, I got in that little town. First thing we always look for is a lot big enough to put that thing in. The sponsor won't do you any good if you get a lot. And the only place there big enough was the fairgrounds, which was owned by the JC Club. Well, I didn't, JC's usually one of the last ones I always talk to. They're easy to get them to agree to do it, but nothing much happens afterwards. And I got plumped to the bottom of the list. I just talked to everybody there and struck out. And band boosters, high school band boosters. I called number, and the contact person for the band booster was one of the professors out at that little college. I guess he had children in high school. And I talked with him real nicely. And he liked the idea. And I said, well, we're going to have to try to deal with the JCs. And he called out and called the JC. And I had a meeting set. I had given up on everybody, and the JCs were wanting me. And I was going to their meeting that night. And I know the reason they were going to sign a contract. That man called me at my motel, and he said, I've got a place, I want you to go look at it, see if it's big enough to put a circus on. And so he come by and picked me up, and we went out in the edge of town, farm out there. Some elderly type of old man, or old lady. And a big, slow rise hill out behind their barns, pens. And the man I've been talking to, he said, could we put that thing up there on top of that hill? I said, yeah, beautiful. You can see it all over town from there. And I thought, boy, that's going to look good. But to get up there on top, to that hill, you had to drive through their driveway and then among all their barns, the hen houses and stuff, twists and turns, with all those big old semi trucks. And I knew it would be hard to do, but it was doable. just thrilled that old man and lady to death. They thought that was the cutest thing in the world. Have that big old huge circus out in there, virtually in their backyard. And those sponsors, Bad Boosters Group, worked hard. They did everything that we suggested to them. And this is 30 years ago, probably. But we made, for their part, something over $7,000 on that day. That's the best day I ever booked.
Well, you look for, a big enough lot, you look for a sponsor, you're looking for key things. You mentioned the schools. What else are you looking for? What are you trying to key in to see if this would be a good place?
Well, I always like to drive by and look at the schools, I mentioned that earlier. Just a little town that looked like it had some life in it instead of just, sometimes you're desperate. You have to do things you don't really want to do. That gets to be habit forming. Some agents say, well, at least I found a place to put it. And you've got to put it somewhere, because daylight, they're on the highway going to wherever it is you're going to put it. And but that, too many agents will do that, feel satisfaction because they got it spotted for the day. That's not good enough. We've got to make some money with that thing, The sponsor expects to make something out of it. The people that own the show darn sure expect to make some money out of it, because they got payroll. And you wouldn't believe the regulations that circuses have. We pull into town pretty much every day. Here come the inspectors. They're all government workers. I guess feel like they've got to do something to earn their keep. So, Circus Town, we'll go out and inspect all their electrical stuff. And it's every day. I mean, if we play Hugo today, here they come. Tomorrow we play Duran. There they have their inspectors. They do it all over again. Some of them want to inspect your cookhouse and the food items that you're selling. Some of them electric, some of them fire inspections. Then the USDA people come along, they want to look at the animals. And it is constant, every day.
So when is the booking agent season over? Do you have any off time after?
Real booking agent, there aren't. I don't know the one real sure enough bona fide booking agent. I'll tell you what happened in a minute. The season never ends for booking agents. They just keep working year round. Opening date, closing date means nothing to them. They just keep working right through the winter. That gives them 4 months in there where they can be gaining ground, getting some contracts. That booking, I already explained to you, it's difficult. It's a straight commission job. Most people are scared of that. Most people want a salary. It's hard to do, and there's fewer and fewer people that do that full time. We had 4 full time booking agents, but you can't. I only know one now. This little Culpeper Merriweather Circus. They have one man that books their entire season. He is a whiz. The most effective agent I've ever seen. But there aren't anymore. What they do now, in the winter time, there'll be a few people on the show who want to go out and book and make a little extra money. And then a lot of circus fans that live all over the U.S. will want to concerned. A lot of agents, the ones that aren't so good, all they want to do is get the signature on the contract, and they feel like their work is done. Well, it isn't. Again, we got to make some money with that money. So those kind of people don't know really. I'm not putting them down, they're good people, but they don't know what they will invariably say the wrong things when you get up to talk to those groups. And, you know, they don't really understand that well. Circus fans, when they want to book it, sometimes they'll work on the town a full year, from this year to next year, to write one contract. And they'll just worry with it, go to countless meetings with them people. Well, the agent can't do that. You've got to get in there and get that thing zipped up and move on. If to make a living, you do. But they're always trying to put you off. They'll say, well, you know, we'll need a week from tonight and we'll give you an answer then. Mr. Jackson would not let us, he was strict. He would not, a lot of circuses will get a deal like that, and they'll let those agents move on up and start setting other dates. Then next for a week from now, you go back and meet with that club. If they tell you no, then you have created a hole in that route. That's the hardest thing in the world to do, is fill a hole in the route. So Mr. Jackson would not let us do that. When we get in town, we will milk it dry or get a contract. After we did everything that you could think of, like the little town in Missouri I was telling you about. Then he'd let you move on. But that show is so big. Another problem with skipping up ahead like this, sometimes you have to backtrack your circus. That Carson and Barnes is a huge show. 200 approximately then. It's not that big now. They're down to one ring now. But had approximately 200 employees, and we gave each one of them that had a vehicle full of trailer, give them gas allowance every day. And then we had probably 12 or 15 big old semi trucks and countless smaller one-ton trucks. And it cost, I figured that one time, and this is 30 years ago, I figured that it cost us $50 a mile to move that circus down the highway. With gas, oil, whatever, flats, tires. So if we go, say in the morning, we played Hugo today, and tomorrow we're going to Durant. So we go to Durant, play that day. If you got some agent that's created that hole, it might be that the next time he books after Durant's back over here. So you gotta come right back down that same 50 miles between here and Durant again, right back through Hugo again. Now you did 100 miles times $50. Is how much? $505,000 that you spent on fuel and new tires, what have you. So Jess would not let us double up. So one time he let me double back like that, about 12 miles. And I thought I had really accomplished something. Work is up in Colorado. Work with the sponsor. Just never could get the deal finished. And I gave up and went on and booked another little town. And sure enough, the guy back here called and he was ready. And I knew we were going to have to double back. And I called Jess and he said, well, go ahead and do it. That's the only time that old fella ever let me double back on that route. Now, a lot of them small shows do it all the time, constantly. And those circus fans that we call them 40 milers, but they don't like getting more than 40 miles away from where they live. They're booking. That doesn't mean anything to them. They don't worry about it. Don't even give it a thought whether you're going to have to double back through there or, and all sorts of things out there for you to compete with, like county fairs and all these once a year things that communities do. I forget what they call them, festivals. They'll kill you dead. A carnival in town will kill you. People will go to a carnival where they will a circus because they get out there and walk around, and eat their popcorn and watch the rides and everything. They're moving around. Well, that's more enjoyable than just sitting down there for an hour and a half. So you sure have to be careful about those kind of things. But the smart agent will never put his show in a town where there's going to be a carnival. Those festivals will try to do that. They usually have a little carnival. But they would love it if they get a circus come there too. They'll try to get you to do it, but that's well, too many people come to see the circus except the carnival people. We let them in free. So, what else would you like to talk about?
Well, we've learned about your life as an advance man, a booking agent. What was your next job?
On the circus?
On the circus.
Press agent. Press agent is a person that can be very valuable to a circus if you're a good one. You can still be good for the show, even if you're not that good. What they do is go about 2 weeks before the circus gets into a town. And they go into that town to see how the sponsor is doing, or is that sponsor doing the things they're supposed to be doing? And if not, why not? And we always get up with the circus chairman and try to get them motivated, excited about the thing. And there's sometimes you can put together promotions that are really advantageous to the circus. For instance, I think of somewhere in Arkansas, I think it was, little town, we was going to have a circus in. And I found out one of the local car dealers out there, Ford and Chevrolet, who had the new, used to with the new model of cars, everybody go down and look at those new cars. They won't do that anymore. They all were just alike now. But he was going to have kind of a blowout that same day we had the circus in town. But he was going to show his new model cars. So I went by there and worked out a deal with him. And in his newspaper, radio advertising, he was going to put in a word about the circus going to be there. He encouraged people to make a day out of go to the circus, come down and look at the new Fords, blah, blah, blah. And we gave him a few free passes to hand out and stuff like that. Circus morning, I made arrangements to have some of the performers go down, and they was doing live radio, remote they call it, and took one of the clowns down, maybe one of the aerialists, maybe the elephant, I don't know, 2 or 3 of them down there for radio interviews. And the clowns, they'd always go down there to the wardrobe and raise money. It made a good day for the car dealers and the circus. But you can work out little deals like that. The circus, but the press agent is main job really is to be sure that everything is on track. We ask our sponsors to do a great deal. So, they get a share of the money, but that's not free money. We ask them to do a number of things for us. We don't ask them to put window cards in the various stores, to advertise the circus in some manner. We don't specify how or what amount to spend, but we do expect them to advertise the circus. And they provide a dumpster, a good sized dumpster that we need every day. They provide the lock. They also provide any permits that are required. Usually, a town, if you're doing a circus for Optimus Club, they'll give you the permits. And we ask them to sell advance tickets for us. So, the press agent checks on all of that while he's in there to see, and you tell right away if they're working or not working. And the ones that make money are the ones that follow our suggestions. The ones that just sit back, don't do anything, don't make any money. They never blame themselves. They blame the circus when they don't make it. I love, again, I just naturally like women. I like to work with female sponsored groups. They work so hard. I had one group that worked with one time. It was ladies. I don't remember what it was, but it was a club of ladies. And we send out what we call a circus charitable planning guide. It's got every kind of suggestion in the world in there that you can do. Nobody ever does them all. But there's so many things you can do, all different kind of contests, clown, honorary ringmaster for a day, and all this blah blah. That the sponsors can do to promote the circus. And I had one club when I was working press, talking to the circus chairman, girl, lady, and she said, "We done everything on that list." And I said, "You what?" She said, we have done all of it. She said, "Now what else can we do?" Well, that's what you like to hear. And, I'm sure they had a good day. I don't remember. But that's what I like to work with the women on those things. They work harder. Men, I guess they're worried to death with other things. But women, you put them on a committee like that, or say, "All right, so you're the show chairman." They take it seriously, and they sure that we do good work. So I like to work with them.
Well, outside of press agent, did you do anything else?
Yeah.
I'm just running down your career in the
That's all right.
circus.
That's okay. One year, first year I worked on this show, I was just David Rawls' yes man, or a gopher. I was kind of following him around and worked with our booking agents somewhat. I'd go to town every day and call all the agents, which is, I learned that from Mr. Jackson. He used to call every one of his agents every day. And a lot of times at 6 o'clock in the morning. And he used to call at 6 and phone at the hotel room, ring. I'd just keep sleeping. I knew who it was. After a while, he'd call back. He'd say, "I called you earlier." And I said, "Well, I stopped down at the coffee shop." So I lay there asleep. Well, see, I'm telling off of myself. But I worked for David that year, just sort of following him around and trained all the agents. I think I mentioned earlier, I was the last agent that Mr. Jackson trained. After that, he'd send them all to me. find out you can do something, that's your job forever. Got down here every time they hire a new agent that send it to me. And well, I didn't care, but so we'd do the same thing. Except, I didn't go out to the meetings and things because I was on the show. But we'd still do the classroom stuff. I worked press, and I really enjoyed that more than I did the book. There's not as much, it's not as stressful as the circus.
And I guess you're not on commission as a press agent.
No, that's salary.
Okay.
And I kind of like that too. I always made it okay. One year, I come down with colon cancer, and we were supposed to die. I did. I guess that disappointed the funeral home man. But it beat the thing. And that's been, I guess, 19 or 20 years ago. But I was wasn't really able to get out there, really work hard like I did on press or our agent did. So a lot of shows have what they call a pie card. Pie is short for privilege. It's a little canteen where you serve coffee, cold drinks, hamburgers, cheeseburgers, french fries. But it's just for the circus employees. It's not out front for the public. It's in what we call a backyard. And when I recuperate, David asked me if I'd like to run a pie card. So I said, yeah, I'll do that. And it had a little Class C motor home. That's Class C, if y'all don't know it. One with the bed you're going to build out over the cab, but it's smaller motor home. And I didn't want to do that cooking in there. Get that thing grease all popped all over it. So it bought it did. So I bought a little old single axle house trailer, tiny one, about 10 feet long, maybe 12. Then gutted the thing and built me a kitchen in there, put a refrigerator in there, got me a little grill. And I run a pie car for 2 or 3 years. Did real good. Pull that thing behind my motorhome. And we make a jump every morning as soon as I get on the lot. I set that thing, I open the pie card. I sell breakfast. 1 or 2 eggs, and toast, and whatever. And did pretty good with it. We let the guys, the working guys, the laborers on Circus were always called working guys. They're the old unkept looking guys you see around Circus, They're good. I admire them because they're working. They're not sitting around on welfare going money from the government. They're working. So I respect them. But we let them buy stuff on the credit, and I keep up with it. And payday on this show was always Sunday morning. And I'd add all up Saturday night how much the different guys had turned it into the office, and the office would hold that much out of the paycheck. I'd go by later and make money. It worked beautifully. I knew I was going to get the money. It worked, and the guys liked it because a lot of them spent all their money the first day they had it. Buy beer, cigarettes, whatever. So did that for 2 or 3 years, and one year this campground wasn't here then, someone come in here when the show was on the road and took a piece of the metal off back of these buildings. People on the show put their vehicles in these barns when they go on the road. Those barns I'd say up there now are always full of cars, pickups, trailer houses. Somebody got in there and stripped everything in there, took all of the radios out, tape decks, even took the air conditioner off the top of the motor home to get there. And we know they got to a show company. And they took tires, starters, just stripped us to probably days in there. And all this back here was grown up in weeds, see? And there never was anybody around the winter quarters. That our office in was downtown. We got the office down right here on the park. So there's nobody out there. And David Ross decided he wanted someone to live here. And I was getting older. He asked me if I'd like to do this. He said, all I want you to do, he said, we'll talk about this thing. He said, we'll put a little shack out there if you live in it. It won't cost you anything. He said, well, I think he's going to give you $100 a month or something, just to be here. Well, that sounded good to me, so I took him up on it. Had some old guy come mow the grass about once every 2 months. But it was always like this. So bad, I told David, I said, if you'll buy this, good lawn mowers and equipment, I'll keep that thing mowed out there. So he did. And his job sort of evolved into what I'm doing here now. So I ended up being fancy night winter quarter superintendent. What that means, you mow the grass and trim the trees. So, but it's interesting. I love a circus. The people that work for circuses are not there because it's a good paying job, because it's not a good paying job. They're there usually because they were born in the circus and that's all they know, or they love it. And if you don't love it, you won't do it. I always admired the women in the circus, but it's pretty tough. Women like to have all the little creaky stuff things they have. You can't do that if you live in a trailer and move every day. Some of those girls, they've got these old huge pickup trucks now. 2 seats, big long things, and house trailers. It's huge. And a lot of the wives, girlfriends drive those pickups, going to those trailers. Their husband or boyfriend driving a semi-truck. So you can see them go over the lot, big old huge rig, jump that concrete curb, the girl driving that thing. And they just do it, I don't love it. They just do a good job of it. So.
Well, going back to your early years, tell me about the first time you met Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller was, I don't really remember. Really, to talk with him was after I told him I would take the job. And the show was somewhere 100 miles from wherever I lived. So I went to see the show before I went on to California to start working. And introduced myself to Mr. Miller, and I love that old man. He was fantastic. He and Mrs. Miller both such good people. And he just treated me like I was one of his kids. He took me all over that lot. He introduced me to everybody. I'd get filled important there. I didn't know what I was in for. But But he's such a nice old fellow. A year or two later, it was winter time, the show was in. That thing's impressive with all that junk up there. It's big. And I stopped by there. DR had a golf cart. He said, "Get on here and I'll go show you everything." We went in every building up there. He pulled out every drawer and showed me what was in it. I really enjoyed that. He's a good old man. When we had DR's funeral, I guess that's the biggest thing ever happened to Hugo. He died a couple of months before the end of the circus season. And they froze him and refrigerated him, whatever. Because they wanted all the circus people to go to the funeral. And so they waited till most of the shows were off the road. And announced the funeral. And this little old town, Hugo, was a who's who of circus the night before that funeral. Show people from all over the United States come in. That old man was very well known. Most of the people that come in here have worked for DR. That's one thing about that old man. It always impresses me. Meet showmen on other shows, and at some time or other, they've all worked for DR Miller. He's good. He and Mrs. Miller, she was just a kid when they married. She was in Kansas. She wasn't certain she covered a large family, a foreign family in Kansas. They played somewhere up there. I think DR went to a dance somewhere in Madden, Iowa. And of course, whatever show he was working for, the movie getting further away every day. When he went back and forth 2 or 3 days and finally got to where it just couldn't do it anymore. So they got married and lived in a little hut then. DR told me one time that I forget the name of that old circus they worked for. One of their old trucks was in the museum at the Baraboo, Wisconsin Circus Museum. But he said that he and Isla would ride on top of that truck on the morning jump. He'd set that little putt in up. And that's where they lived. Hard working, honest people. Worked hard, worked like dogs. Did without save their money, they had to go. And they're very wealthy people. Very wealthy people. And that's why nobody gave them anything. They earned every penny. They got a big old green house up there. He used to drive Lincoln around. Bought him there. He fly. I doubt the old man ever had a pilot's license, but he used to fly. And they tell me it's kind of frightening. But anyway, and I've heard people criticize it because they had well. But I'll tell you one thing, those poor old people earned every penny of it. I love them both. They're such good people. Isla used to come down this road out here. Anybody walking across the lot, it didn't make any difference because the lowest guy on this crew should always honk and just wave, Some people kind of that way. They sure stick together. A lot of people kind of wary, show people. That works both ways. It's
true. Yeah.
Show people don't fully trust town people. We call
Even in Hugo?
Well, you know, Hugo is unique. Towns where a lot of circuses are headquartered don't appreciate the town, but Hugo loves us. It's a big part of the economy here. Down through the years, there's been probably 20 or more circuses headquartered in this town. And a lot of those people, just like I have myself, stay here. And they spend a lot of money in Hugo. I know the first year this little show was on the road, they bought, I don't know, 7, maybe 10 brand new 1-ton Ford trucks. And when the show come in, they had them all lined up down the fence up here. We bought them down here at the local Ford dealer. That's a pretty good lick for a town this size. Sell 6 or 10 or whatever. And there's a lot of those kind of stories. So, this town, they love the circus. They love circus people. We're just welcome. And that sure is. Rosebud, that's her name. That was the tackiest thing I could think of when I got that cat. I listened to those old time radio programs. The old Love and After program. You familiar with that? After had his milk cow. Her name was Rosebud. And I thought that's the corniest thing you ever heard. Of course, they trying to make it corny. So that's what I've done in cat.
Well, I know you're going to show us a little something about Showman's Rest, but
I've got that tape.
Can you just give us a little background on
Yes.
Showman's Rest?
Yes, I can. Back, I don't know what year, but back a good many years ago, there was one area in the cemetery out there that, Rosie, you get up, you leave there. And listen to her whine. And you're going to you want to spank it? I don't blame you. I wouldn't either. There was a pretty large area out there in the cemetery that was whining. And one of I think it was Mr. Miller's brother died. And they buried him in that area. And they just bought that whole block in there. And along about that time, we had an old elephant hand up there. He was just an old circus dog, old nasty, uncapped guy. I don't guess he had any family. And he died. That old man had a little money. I guess his life savings. And he left it to Mr. Business Miller. And they needed a little more money, like a hole in here. They didn't know what to do with it. So they established a trust fund. So when anyone, a show person dies, if they can't afford to buy their lot, the trust fund will buy it for them. And they'll put a little stump up there. It won't be anything elaborate, but some of the small ones you saw out there go this high, maybe that wide. They're paid for with the trust fund. And there's a tall stone out there where that old elephant got buried. But he started the Showman's Rest Trust Fund. And that was Mr. Billy Miller started it with the money that he left to them. And there are a lot of big names buried out there. I told someone one day if all those people could be resurrected overnight and we put on a show, it would be one whale in the circus. Everything in the world is buried out there. We've got wire walkers, trapeze people, elephant men, circus owners, showgirls, snake handlers. They're all there. I've got my stock out there already. But that's, we run out of room out there. There's still some blank spaces out there, but they're bought. About 10 years ago, people started buying those things 6 or 7 or 8 at a time, for families. Well, they go quick. We can do that. And I understand there's nothing out there anymore for sale. Excuse me. What else are you curious about?
Well, you've been to many places throughout your life. You've seen many different towns. You know
that old song, I've been everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
That's me.
You know, and I know you've had opportunities here with the circus, but you know, why do you plan on, you know, coming back? You've come back to Hugo. You've made your home here. Why did you decide Hugo of all places?
Well, I don't even really know when I officially started living here. You know, I used to come in here every winter for a while, but I don't know. I like this little town. The people here are friendly, and they're especially friendly to circus people. And I started going to church here and kind of got involved in that way. And got to know people at the coffee shops. It's just home for me. I intend to be here until they put me out there and show me the rest.
And you came in 1954, is that right? About 1954?
No, it was about 80. I always have to look. I think 84. I was about 54 years old. It was 52 or 54, I don't remember which. I'm 82 now. But I just love it. I look forward to coming in every year. And I look just as much forward to it going back out. With all the crying babies, the barking dogs.
How many agents do you think you trained, booking agents?
Oh, I don't know.
If you had to guess.
I don't know. Maybe 20, 30. But I never thought that I was that good at booking the circus, but I've got everybody fooled. Really.
That's hard work. It's all about the hard work. Working hard.
There's one guy, he's dead now, great big fat man, he's this big around. He's a circus producer, and my son worked on this show for, I think, 9 years. He was head mechanic. He was talking to that guy one time. I know the man, but I never got to work with him or for him. And he told Keith, he said, your daddy is the best booking agent I've ever done. And I thought, wow. And Keith, you know, that pleased him. He come back home and told me that. But I've got it food right. David Ross, he embarrassed me once. He has an uncle, Mary's brother, born in this business, has managed circuses, has owned, I think, a time or two, he owned little old shows. That's all he's ever done. And he decided to book some dates for David. And David said, well, I want you to go down there and let Uncle Daniel talk to you before you go out. So I felt like an idiot sat in here trying to tell this guy, you know, probably what you want to do is this and that. It's embarrassing.
It's a compliment.
Oh, you know, the circus has undergone many changes through the years. Where do you think it's headed within the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, it's frightening to think. Someone asked Mr. Miller that, and his opinion was worth much more than mine. But what he said was, he said, I think there will always be a circus, but it's going to be different. And I remembered that. And since then, I have seen so many changes in the circus business. And it is a changing business. For instance, used to, there weren't any indoor shows. But now, you know, that's the big thing. Shriners usually do in the cities, they always do an indoor thing. Wrigley does. Wrigley quit using Ted. I don't remember what year it was, but anyway, it's not the same. I used to tell sponsoring groups when I make a presentation, I'd say, you know, indoor circuses are put on good shows. Maybe better than the rest of us, I don't know. But I said, you can take your family, wife, little kids, to an indoor show and sit there in that air-conditioned Coliseum and see the show. But I said, when you get home, you don't feel like you've been to a circus. If you go to one of these things in a tent, you're out close enough, you can smell the elephants. The elephants have a strong odor. I don't know if y'all know that or not. But you can. I used to tell sponsor groups, I said, going to an indoor circus is just like if you have a picnic plan. If it starts raining, what do we do now? Well, you go get in the high school gymnasium. You eat the same food you'd eat at that picnic, play the same games. But when you go home that night, you don't feel like you've been on a picnic. And I said, going to an indoor circus is the same way. And I'm that hard-headed about it. There's an old fella, Mr. Loyal. He's in his youth, he was Laura Penske, bareback riding down. John Ringley North brought over from Europe right after the war, or just before the war. And one of the young men in that family, Alfonso Loyal, I think they're Italian, lived here. They ended up working at the Carson Barn Circus. Laura Penske was one of the three top bareback acts in the world, I guess. They were good. But anyway, the little man spoke kind of broken English. And I heard him talking. I think it was a reporter that he was talking to, or someone was interviewing. And I asked him about the indoor circus. And well, Alfonso said, if you don't got no tent, you don't got no circus. But back to your question, used to circus day, the circus would go to town and they would do a parade. And you get to see that in that movie, Greatest Show on Earth. You might not remember that, but they did that. Well, they don't do that anymore. Everything's in trucks instead of horse-drawn wagons. So we lost that. Music and circuses, what we call traditional music, was written especially for circus acts. Most of that old circus music was written by circus bandmasters. And for instance, flying trapeze acts all used to always they would play waltz music. Because, you know, that trapeze, you kind of swing it slowly. And waltz music just works beautifully. But now, the new generation play that old hip hop, and that guy on that drum just bang, clash, boom, while those people slowly, you know, swinging on trapeze. It's just, they have quit using traditional music, and they try, what they're trying to do is appeal to young adults. And I guess that's all right, but it makes me angry. Music has always been a big part of the circus. Merle Evans was a band director on the old Wrangling show when they were under canvas, when it was a real circus. He had about a 30-something piece band. And boy, they were good. Most of them, very few bands in circus anymore. They use tape music now. Some of the tapes are good, some of them are terrible. But that's another big change. I wrote a tacky letter to the editor one time of one of the circus publications about the music. And I said, why is it when you see on television an advertisement for circus that's going to be in town or a radio spot, they always have background circus, and it'll be old traditional circus music every time. Circus comes to town, that circus, go down and buy a ticket to go to the show to hear that good band music, and they're playing orchestra. I knew I was in trouble when I went to see the Clyde Beatty Cobra of the circus. So at once they had a good band and they played traditional music. Several years later, I drove a long, long way out to Texas to see Clyde Beatty Circus again. And at the very beginning of the circus, they introduced the band director, and I knew I was in trouble. The ringmaster said, directing our orchestra today is Joe Blow or whoever. And I thought, uh-oh. And sure enough, it was all pop music. But it's just, that's where you get a lot of the atmosphere. So that's another change that we see. This Circus Soleil outfit has come along. And I'm not at all in tune with that. You're a bunch of homosexuals, what you are. If you have ever been to one of those things, you probably have seen that. The guy, you just tell. It's pretty evident. But very few of them come from circus. They're show people, they're actors, performers, or gymnastic type people. When that thing first started, that's a Canadian company was originally. And the Canadian government underwrote that thing. So it wasn't some poor guy out there that put his own $1 million up. Rosie.
She's a smart cat.
But anyway, the first year or two, she loves to talk. I talk to her all. That's my fault. First year or two, Soleil, the acts were just pretty ordinary. Not, we not like stuff you see on our show. But since then, it was improved greatly. But I don't like it. And it's what has happened. That thing has been so successful that all the other circus owners were copying that thing. even Wrigley, now never, Wrigley has always been the trendsetter in this industry. But even, lo and behold, even Wrigley is doing stuff the Soleil way now. So, well, Kenneth Phelps, who owns that thing, he's got a daughter about the age of you girls. He's turned most of that circus stuff over to her. And I guess she, things like younger people, but I don't know. There's another very successful show, a Big Apple Circus, New York. Used to sure be top-notch circus. It still is, really. But a lot of circuses now think, they want to have a theme for the entire program, which I don't go along with that either. I think get in there, do the act, get out. But every act, some of these circuses now are supposed to tell a story, blah, blah, like if I get the Russian scholar, flying trapeze, flying eagles or something such. Flying swans. They're supposed to look like swans floating around out there. Well, good gosh, give me a break. Introduce them, let them do the act, get them out of there, put somebody else on. But anyway, that's another change that's coming about.
Well, what's your favorite part about the circus?
My favorite part is something else that's changed. We used to do all circuses, the bigger they were, the more impressive it was. They do what they call spec, S-P-E-C, which is short for spectacular. At some point in the circus, they would do this parade around what we call the hippodrome track, the wide track, all the way around the ring. And every performer was required to make spec. You had to be in it. And you not only had to be in it, but you had to smile and look happy and, wave at the crowd and all that. Mainly people used to hide themselves in the audience, to check, to see who was, a lot of, especially the young kids, 15, 20 years old, they expect to walk along like they're bored to death, just looking at the ground as they're walking, instead of smiling and waving. They're supposed to act like they're as excited as the people in the audience are. Of course, they do that 2 times a day, 7 days a week. So, but anyway, spec has always been my favorite part of any circus. The bigger and better the show is, the bigger and better spec is. But you see a lot of pretty wardrobes in spec, and it's just good. We started doing spec on this show a number of years ago. Had pretty good little old spec. Come in the back door and get on the track, go around it. One of the ways you judge spec, if they're still coming in while the first ones are going out the door, that's good. And we did that on this little show. We had some miniature donkeys, but they don't get maybe that big. And David Ross had guys who decided to build a little 2-wheel cart. And we had 3 or 4 little Mexican kids about this big. Their mamas fixed little costumes for them, real circusy stuff. Put them on that thing. And one of the working guys would lead that donkey, gets back. But they always have the elephants in there with pretty blankets on the tail. And I just love spec. It's It's exciting to me. It is. So on the circus, the acts are there's a great deal of thought goes into what act follows the next act and the next one and the next one. What you do it's difficult. Most shows have gone to one ring, and it's difficult because used to they used ring 1 and 3 while they were setting up the center ring. And then, you know, the 1 and 3 finished their act, and the next act made the center ring, and then they're changing the props in 1 and 3. But when you're with one ring, it creates problems. So you do several things to get around that. You send clowns in, get over to one side, you know, doing their foolishness, and while the prop guys are getting things ready. But you kind of mix the acts. You do a ground act, and then you follow that maybe with an aerial act, and about every 3 or 4, after 3 or 4 acts, then you throw in an animal act sometimes, and you mix that. You don't want too many aerial acts in a row, and you don't want too many ground acts in a row. And you like to throw some pretty wardrobe in there occasionally. That's usually the girls. But it's a lot of thought goes into all that.
Well, you're quite the student of the circus.
Well, I just love it. When I started, you know, I told you all those other things I had interest in. But when I started working at the circus, that was it. It's the most enjoyable thing I've ever done in my whole life. It's all I want to do. And I'm happy just to be here in this shack, and, you know, right in the middle of everything. I'm always glad to see him come in, glad to see him go out. And some of them call you make a lot like this old girl that called me, old Sue, a while ago. Make a lot of friends in this business. After you have worked on the circus for several years, you'd walk on any circus lot, wherever, whatever show it is, there'll be somebody there that you know. Like usually you've worked with. And you know, it makes it fun. And you never know. You hear about what's going to be in Paris station, you drive by, and sure enough, there'll be old whoever.
It's family.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as we wind down, is there anything else you'd like to tell us that we haven't asked you about?
Well, we're trying to get a circus museum. So I don't think that, I hate to say it, but you know, the economy being the way it is, I don't think we'd never, I can't see that happening.
It takes time.
Yeah. We bought an old house, and we were going to try to redo it, put the museum in that, but we decided to take 2 rocks, so we're in the process of tearing it down. So we're right across the street from the library. It's a good location. But I'm interested in that. We've got Showmen club here that always something.
Well, is there anything else that we haven't asked you about that you'd like to add?
Well, I don't know. Not all paid.
If you could be a performer, which one would you be?
Well, that's a good question. I have always liked high wire. But most people say trapeze, flying trapeze. There's difference in trapeze. There's flying trapeze and there is trapeze. Trapeze is single trapeze, so it's usually called single trap. Big difference. That's what usually girls sometimes men do single trap. it's mostly just striking various pretty poses, you know, but they do a little bit of acrobatic and stuff over there. But flying trapeze, that's one where they zip through the air, you know. And that's what most people like, flying trapeze. But I love high wire. That's, to me, that's very dangerous, very dangerous. That's what I love.
Well, we appreciate your time today, and
Well, I've enjoyed it. Probably didn't tell you much. Did a lot of talking, but didn't say much.